Reverend Al Sharpton, surprisingly enough, decided to endorse Bernie Sanders ahead of South Carolina. But on top of endorsing Bernie Sanders, he actually dropped some truth bombs that a lot of people are aware of, but I think a lot of people forget to consider when we're having these conversations surrounding the modern day neo McCarthyism. Let's talk about it. So, most of you all are familiar with Al Sharpton in one way or another. I'm not going to lie, the young black community is not too fond of Al Sharpton. We consider him mostly an opportunist. He's mostly establishment. He is mostly a clout chaser, with some glimmer of of progress that he displays every now and then. But he is what I like to call a cop car chaser. In other words, he spends more time trying to get black people angry about what's happening, which is true, we should be, but then almost zero time fighting for the solutions, at least in any palpable way, like any way that we can like say, oh man, look, this is Al Sharpton doing what he always does. No. And he also has propped up people and defended people such as Kamala Harris, for example. He's defended Hillary Clinton in the past. So he has his issues, right? But the fact that he has his issues is what makes this particular clip even more stunning. So let's check it out.
The civil rights movement always was targeted by those that would use the Red Scare. I talked the other night at Trinity University where Clola Brown was there about how when I started my youth group, Bayard Rustin gave me the money. Bayard Rustin was an organizer, the chief organizer of the March on Washington. They would not let him take a public profile because they said he was a communist. They accused Dr. King of being a communist. Every major leader in the 60s, they tried to call socialist a communist. Whatever you decide to do on Saturday, do not go by those that use the socialist tag to try to separate us from what we need to do for this country, because we've been down that road before. And we are not that stupid to allow you to tell us who is what. Socialism, capitalism, all of it has not worked fairly for black folks.
So one second. So that was part of the speech that he gave after the riveting endorsement of Bernie Sanders, and I must admit, I was impressed. I was impressed for a couple of reasons. This is actually something that I've talked about over and over again, which is why I say no, we should not be naive enough nor stupid enough to allow this McCarthyism to be used against our modern day progressive leaders. Any time anybody has been considered anti-establishment, they've been smeared as a quote unquote communist, a Russian sympathizer. They've been spied on by the FBI. I believe it was Dwight Eisenhower's administration spied on Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King, I believe, called him out on it. Malcolm X, Huey P. Newton, Angela Davis, all these people were smeared and called communists. The Black Panthers were called communists. But it wasn't just the black leaders, but the white leaders too. White leaders who were anti-war, white leaders who were sympathetic and participated in the civil rights movement. This was the norm, actually. And nobody has been wanting to say it, which has been somewhat weird because I thought this was an obvious point. But I'm glad that Al Sharpton used his platform there to reiterate that. We all know that Al Sharpton is part of the establishment. He is. But when even Al Sharpton is telling us, the world, the voters of South Carolina, don't believe the establishment. Don't allow them to use McCarthyism, and he used the appropriate word there, Don't allow them to use McCarthyism to shape how you govern yourselves, how you vote, who you support. And that shouldn't, obviously that's not only applicable to South Carolina, but for our entire political process going forward. Now, what does it say that Bernie Sanders was able to get someone like Al Sharpton, who, once again, many consider a con man, if I'm being honest, right? But definitely at the bare minimum, right? At the bare minimum, Al Sharpton is at least establishment, or at least an establishment sympathizer. So what does it say that Bernie Sanders can get somebody like Al Sharpton to endorse him right before South Carolina, which is heavily saturated with black voters? Well, it says what I said and what I have been saying for the last 3 years. It ain't the same. 2016 is not the same as 2020. I've always said that 2015 and 2016 supporting Bernie meant that you likely had much more to lose than you could have ever had to gain. You weren't going to be guaranteed that job. You weren't going to be paid a lot if you were a staffer. At the time, it was not believed that you were going to get any type of clout for supporting Bernie. Everything that we see today, we did not know that that was going to happen in 2015, 2016. It's different now, though. People have started consulting firms based off of being a volunteer for Bernie, just based off of literally volunteering. We've seen millionaires, and people become relatively rich on YouTube and other platforms for supporting Bernie Sanders. We've seen a new wave, in Sagar and Crystal, specifically Crystal. Look, they just had their first live show the other day, and it's mostly because Crystal is just an ardent and outspoken supporter who talks about Bernie 90% of the time. People have established entire careers off of this. His popularity, over 1 million unique donations, over 1 million volunteers, 30 million phone banking calls. Like, bro, fundraising record after fundraising record after fundraising record. For the establishment, the writing is on the wall. And I think that to a large degree, Al Sharpton sees that. If he supports Bernie, if he supports the candidate that many black people see as the best candidate for black people, he knows that a lot of the negatives in his legacy will be erased, and he will be known as the person who endorsed Bernie Sanders at a very pivotal moment in history. Now, what does that say for the rest of the establishment? It says that you should probably see them falling in line here pretty soon. You're going to have some stragglers. You're going to have the stragglers are going to attack, in the most vicious of ways, right? Look at Jason Johnson, look at Chris Matthews, Chuck Todd, and a few others. Anderson Cooper even. They're going to have some stragglers. But everyone else out here, they're trying to get their money. They're trying to get their clout. And they're going to do what they have to do that. And Bernie Sanders seems to be, or at least the movement that he started, seems to be the way that many people have decided to maintain their relevancy or catapult themselves into popularity. Al Sharpton is taking advantage of this. And if you're a Bernie Sanders supporter or a supporter of the progressive movement, this is very beneficial to you, although it does mean that you do have to be mindful. You have to be mindful of people who are coming into the movement at such a convenient time, right? As Bernie Sanders just wins 3 states, as he surges, as he wins 2 debates back to back, does pretty damn well on the town hall event, as Jason Johnson is benched for smearing his supporters, as Chris Matthews is forced to apologize, as Super Tuesday is coming up and it's looking like Bernie's going to win almost every state. It's really convenient for people to all of a sudden, you know what, guys? Maybe Warren wasn't the best choice. I still love her, but I have to do what's best for the country. Yeah, What would have been best for the country is for you to endorse the progressive from the beginning. In this particular race, there might have been 4 choices. Depending on how you feel about Andrew Yang, there was Bernie, Tulsi, Marianne Williamson, Andrew Yang. If they weren't one of your choices, then you're switching over to Bernie for selfish reasons. And you're trying to clout chase. And not saying that we should not welcome any help, awareness that's brought to the progressive movement, but be mindful. We've seen plenty of people as of late come into the movement and try and co-opt it. Now, Al, I hope you keep that same energy when it's time to call out these super delegates. And everybody else who just decided to join the show, just decided to join the party, keep that same energy when it's time to call out the establishment. Because this whole front running thing, cheering when it's the easy part, this is the easy part. Make no mistake about it. It ain't get hard yet. When it's going to get hard is coming up in Tuesday, South Carolina, where Bernie will either outperform in every way or potentially take his first loss to Joe Biden. Potentially. We don't know if that's going to happen. The hard part is when you have to call out election integrity or election fraud, and you figure out, oh, damn, it's actually my party that's doing it. Are you going to be willing to call them out? Or are you going to say, nah, the number one goal is to get Trump so blue no matter who? So all those same people who are joining the Bernie train, joining the progressive wave via Bernie in 2020, once again, if you're switching from Warren, switching from Klobuchar, switching from Buttigieg, switching from Kamala, even Cory Booker, y'all are late. And I have every reason to be skeptical of your support for Bernie Sanders. Because I saw what happened. You saw TYT built up 4 million subscribers and then told everybody to go and back Hillary Clinton. Anna Kasparian literally attacked and smeared Jill Stein. They started pushing Russiagate. I see what happens when Bernie Sanders' movement gets used for nefarious purposes and the self-fulfillment of certain people's agendas. I've seen it. We're already living through the results. So let's just be mindful of that. I'm very thankful that Al Sharpton helped educate people on the history of McCarthyism, not just generally, but even how black leaders have been smeared. The people who have been fighting for the black community, the working class, fighting against war, fighting against capitalism, fighting against imperialism, have always been historically smeared. And I'm glad that someone from the mainstream, while endorsing a prominent progressive candidate, while speaking in front of a South Carolina crowd that could really sway this election, they could put it in the bag for Bernie, or it could go to Biden. And he's saying, while everybody's watching, don't listen to this nonsense. We've already heard it all before. And none of it is worth it if it means not doing what's best for us, just to appease the establishment who wants to push this neo-McCarthyist agenda. All right. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for tuning into that live stream segment of McCarthyist. If you have not yet, you can still contribute to our GoFundMe to get me to California and New York. We are over halfway there. So you can click on the link in the description or click on the link in the comment section that will be posted after this video posts. Make sure you subscribe to Rockfin, but always remember, more than anything else, ladies and gentlemen, find your balance. Peace. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell if you like that segment of Mika Says Sukasa. Of course, if YouTube is giving you trouble, as it always does, you can download the Rockfin app and follow us there. Also, if you want to continue to help our show grow, you can help us reach our goal of 500 patrons on Patreon and donate as little as $1. Really, anything helps. Other than that, always remember, people, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.